Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Jason's Take On. Today, we'll be talking about how do you build and integrate customer success from the very beginning. An exciting topic that we're really looking forward to covering today, so thank you for joining us. For those of you who are new to our podcast, you can check out our Jason's Take On company page on LinkedIn and can follow us there to get updates in your feed. We also have a LinkedIn group, and we are on Twitter. And you can also check us out on the jasonstakeon.com. So thank you so much for being here. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Jason Whitehead, based in Washington, D.C., a longtime practitioner of the customer success arts, as well as a coach and trainer and executive consultant around customer success and all things user adoption. And I'm joined today by my co-host, Jason Noble. Jason?
Hey, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon. I'm the other half of the Jasons. I'm Jason Noble, based here in sunny London. In the UK, my background is in the world of customer success. Kind of leadership across a lot of technology startups, bigger organizations over the years as well. Currently as the Vice President of Customer Success for Vinley Limited, a US-based technology company focusing on connected cars. Really excited to be doing these podcasts. I still can't believe we've been doing them over a year now. Yeah. But it's great to see the topics that we're talking through really resonating with the audience and our listeners, but also having some great guest speakers coming on. So another really exciting topic.
Great. All right. So for those of you who are used to our podcast, we like to start each episode with a bold challenge question to really get you to think and act differently and take bold action to really drive customer success forward in your organization and as a practice. So for those of you who are starting a new company, this week's challenge question is, what do you need to do to integrate a customer success culture and practice into everything you do in your organization from day one? So give some thought to that. And that really leads us to our first question. So Jason, why don't you kick us off by telling us why aren't enough companies looking at customer success from day one? What's holding them back?
I think it's a great question to ask, particularly when you've kind of posed that bold question for people to take away with, was how do you do it? And then why aren't people doing it? Because it is a common problem. We are beginning to see more and more organizations doing it. And there are some great examples where people are building it in from day one, or when organizations are building it in a few years or even months down the line. But we're still seeing a big challenge where it isn't best practice, it isn't common practice. And I think there are a number of core reasons here. One is that there are a lot of organizations and business leaders that still don't really know about customer success. They don't understand what it's for. They don't understand where it's come from, what the background is, or the need for them to do it. So that's one big issue. I think that it isn't yet a core part of business. It's becoming more and more so, but it's not something seen as something as fundamental as, say, sales or operations. It's a new thing that's very different. So again, people aren't seeing it as part of that core part of the business they need to be building. It's also not yet being taken on in a lot of MBA programs, business schools, teaching what customer success is. So you get business leaders, entrepreneurs coming out that, again, don't necessarily know what it is because their education hasn't told them about it. So there's some really key reasons around that. I think there are still a number of skeptics out there. There are a number of people that still don't think it's the right thing. They've not seen good examples of where it has worked, so they don't believe it's necessary. You're still getting a lot of customer success teams that are new. They may be relatively junior in terms of experience for the people doing it. It might be your CSMs coming into a brand new job, just creating a new role, but working in an organization that's not working as effective as they can, delivering what customer success is, and not yet proving the worth of what they're delivering to the business. And it's still not seen as an imperative to growth, long-term survival, or even a competitive differentiator. And that's something that you and I, Jason, have spoken about at length before. Mm-hmm. I think you still get a lot of people saying, that people are not experts, rather, that you get people coming into customer success roles who don't know what it is. They're seeing it as a title and something they need to know. And they don't have anyone that they can lean on to help them define what it should be for the business. And even when you're starting with founders, if they don't know what it is, how do they go about finding out what it is and building it into the business? And when they do know about it, I think there's a lot of pressure from external people, investors, that say, what are you doing about CS? And really it tend to be knee-jerk reactions instead of it being core business philosophy. It's externally influenced as to why they're doing it. It's still also a very new way of working. The way customer success is a very different discipline. It's not a team, it's a way of business, it's a way of thinking, it's a way of collaboration that just doesn't hasn't existed before. And many organizations just don't see it. They just don't see what they need to do and don't see it as being this business-wide way of working. And organizations are still focusing just on the product. What is the problem that we're selling? How do we go to market? How do we sell? What they're not focusing on is how do we sell value? How do we provide value to our customers? How do we deliver outcomes? And many companies, even startups, the focus when they start is still on landing that initial sale. It's really on that initial growth. What they're not doing yet is putting that focus on renewals, on long-term revenue, customer lifetime value. So I think there are a number of very different reasons why we're still not seeing it occurring. It's beginning to come around, but still not there that every organization is looking as day one. I'm confident that we will see it happening, but I feel there are still some fundamental reasons that we're not seeing it there.
Yeah, absolutely. Those are all really, really good points. It's early days still.
It is, absolutely. I'd almost then flip the question for you, Jason. For those companies, there's new companies that are embracing embedding customer success from very early on from day one. Why are they doing it? You know, what's different about them?
Yeah, this is exciting to see, and we don't see as much of it yet, but I think in the next year, 2 years, 5 years, definitely we'll see a lot more of this. And what I'm seeing are, some founders and, the early leadership team and have been in organizations and have seen sales and CS done well before. They can see the outcomes and the value it generates from their previous companies. So they've had great experiences with customer success. They've seen the ability to drive retention, and they see how important that is for those long-term revenues. So they see the value and the outcome it brings. So they get excited about this, and they recognize that we need to have this from day one, or we'll be in trouble down the road. So I think that's really important. I think also you'll see some sales leaders out there. We already see some sales leaders that have come from organizations where CS has been done well, and you can see where this great customer success experience, it can help drive sales. It can help lead to better outcomes that you deliver, and help lead to those closing deals faster and securing renewals. So those who have had good experience and have partnered closely with customer success teams have said, hey, this can actually help me land my sales and grow my revenues faster. So they embrace this idea of, we need to get beyond just this initial sale, and we need to make sure we have this reoccurring sales mentality. And you mentioned earlier, Jason, how sometimes investors are out there, and some investors will simply say, well, tell me what you're doing. And the leadership will have sort of a knee-jerk reaction, like I've got to react to this. Where other investors, I think, are starting to provide resources and guidance and expertise and say, this is how you grow your company faster and better. This is how you secure those revenues. Let's provide some tools and resources and education around customer success. And some investors I know have even approached us around how do we bring this CS expertise in-house to their investor organization so they can distribute it out to all of their portfolio companies. And that's exciting to see the investors taking it seriously, not just asking a question that gives it lip service. But then I think the other piece, and this is kind of exciting, as you mentioned, the business schools, is having younger generations coming into the workforce and leading the workforce now and leading new companies, the millennials, the Gen Zs. They've grown up with great working apps, and they're used to great service, and they're used to a subscription world and a subscription mindset. And from the very beginning, throughout their lives, they're used to, you need to have a great customer experience, and they experience the value and recognizing value every step of the way. So they realize that, oh, this is just what's expected now. And for them, it's more natural to go this way. They don't need to overcome a lot of bad habits and years working in large organizations or organizations that were run in more of a historic mindset. So they don't have to overcome all that, and they're working towards different priorities from the very beginning. And I think that's pretty exciting. So those are just some of my thoughts. But Jason, for you, what is the value and impact from embracing customer success very early on in a company's founding? Why should companies do it, and how does it help them?
I think it ties in a lot to kind of the points there that you've just covered. Particularly when you kind of look at the younger generation and the idea that they want value from day one, and they've got an idea of what value is. And I think embracing customer success really allows you to shift your way of thinking away from products and problems and solutions to being about value and outcomes and what that means. And that's really critical. That business is changing. And it really helps you develop a much bigger and broader vision and help you find new ways that really add value for your customers. And I think that's so important. I think, like you've said as well, Jason, that one of the things is if you are doing customer success at the right level, you are beginning to set a very high bar from what customer experience looks like from day one. and your customers' expectations around that. Our customer expectations are very different today. It is, yes, absolutely, the younger generation have grown up, as you said, but we're seeing it across industry. There are a lot of fantastic products and services out there where people just have an expectation as to how they will be delivered. And I think by embracing customer success properly from day one, we're engaging with our customers in the right way and we're helping us meet their expectations. The thing is that customers are no longer just looking for features and functions or widgets. They're looking for them to, how do we help them grow professionally within their organizations, but also personally as a result of working with us and with our company. And they're looking beyond features and prices in the buying decision. They're evaluating value and experience as part of that decision. It's something that I know you've talked about in a lot of your work that you do, Jason, around that sales process. It's not just about selling features and buying around that. There's a whole different psychology that comes in around the buying there. And I think we're also seeing that customers are no longer willing to tolerate pushy salespeople, pushy sales processes. This has to deliver what they want, how they want it. We've got to be very conscious of that. One of the other key things is it makes us focus on lifetime value. I said in the opening question, you've got to shift away from that initial sale and initial revenue to lifetime value for customers. But also, as part of that, there's a long-term customer relationship. So don't just focus on that initial closing a sale and landing the deal. You've got to think longer term. I think sales, renewals, and deals are becoming far more personal and relationship based than they used to be, particularly when you look at large scale enterprise B2B organizations. Buyers need to know that they can trust the people that they're working with. They need to know that they can trust their partners and work with them long term. And they want to know that you're invested in their success, both their success as an organization, but also their success as an individual. And that's something that's really important. Mm-hmm. You hear a lot of talk, both within the customer success community, but also kind of from vendors as them wanting to be trusted advisors. And as part of that, buyers really feel they need to feel that they can trust you over the long term to help them. And that's something that's really critical. It also helps you focus your entire organization from day one. So again, customer success from day one isn't a department, it's a way of thinking. So if your entire organization, from marketing, from sales, from product, from support, from tech, from engineering, are working together, collaborating a lot more to deliver the right value for customers and meeting your customer needs, you've got a very, very different proposition for your customers. It's not about a customer success team that we're still seeing. And you ultimately waste less time, less effort, and less resources really focused around internal agendas. If you can work around collaboration, facilitation from day one, you help avoid a lot of that infighting, and you will know that you're sharing the common goal, that we're designing everything we do around the success of our customers. And the key thing is, and we've talked about this before when we spoke with one of our guests, but it lets you start focusing around building success functionality into your product from day one. So make your product focus on your customers, on their experiences and their outcomes from the start. So it isn't just about a customer success team, it's about this whole philosophy and working. Mm-hmm. So there's some of my thoughts. And I think that really brings me on to kind of the next question. How do we do this? So what do you need to do to make sure customer success is there from day one? And I think this is a key thing that our listeners are wanting to understand. I'll throw that one over to you, Jace.
This is a key thing, and so many existing organizations that try to integrate customer success into their existing infrastructure really struggle with getting integrated and effectively in all that alignment. So focusing on it from day one is very key. And I think one of the first things to understand, it doesn't matter who you are, what your role is, if you're involved in an early stage of a new company, you have the power to influence this. If you're a founder or an investor, an advisor, an executive, even a vendor or one of those first early staff members, you have the ability to shape the conversation and focus the organization on customer success and experience and that long-term relationship. And you can do it from the very start. So the first thing is to recognize that, yes, you can make a difference. And then, one of the simplest and easiest ways that I've found is, don't just make statements to people and say how great it is, but ask questions to create that aha moment that helps everyone recognize the need and the opportunity for themselves. It's really, you can talk and talk and talk till you're blue in the face, but getting someone to answer questions and structuring the conversation and the questions, the right wording in the right sequence makes a big difference. to create those aha moments. And I think it's important to recognize, and, you can even ask questions, how you build up to it and create context around it first, but simple things like, when do we want to fail? Is it 2 years from now? Is it 5 years from now? When will the decisions we make today lead to a loss of revenues and renewals tomorrow? And then turn it around, and ask people, what can each department do, or what do they need to do today to ensure we have long-term success and have those long-term commitments from our customers and those customer advocates for us? And really get people thinking about that what happens if we don't do this, and what's the impact? I think there's also looking at, are there things that you need to create in your product from day one? And we've had Dave Jackson on. He's a very big advocate of product-led success. So if you haven't seen that episode, go check it out. But really, what are the things that you can integrate in the product from day one that will either help create value for customers or create the recognition of value for the customers? So, one of the examples I often share is we have solar panels on our house, and there's a website with a dashboard that shows all the metrics, and it has different feel-good metrics out there to display. So it will say, here's how many kilowatts you've generated, but it will show, here's how many trees that weren't cut down as a result of this, or how many miles not driven, or the equivalent of how many barrels of oil not burned because of this alternative energy source. And things like that are just embedded in their product. It doesn't really affect my use of it a whole lot, but it does make me feel better about it and makes me more of an advocate. So I think there are things there that you can put in the product. And then I think, do we know what outcome and value we are meant to deliver to our customers, and asking those type of questions? Is it the same as what our customers and prospects want? And there can be two views, the vendor and the customer. Are we really aligned on what is the value that we're trying to deliver to our customers' organizations? And asking those type of questions right up front and getting people really clear on that shifts you away from a feature function discussion or a sprint discussion or product development one to, what is the value that we're trying to achieve? So things like that can make a big difference, I think. But then I think if we take it to the real extreme here, and Jason, would love your thoughts on this, what are some bold changes that we can do to help ensure customer success is embedded from day one for those organizations really looking to go big on this? What should they do?
I think you've covered some really great points there, and I think isn't there a blog post that you've done recently about those questions? Because I think that questioning is a really key thing, and that there's a lot of time that I've spent kind of trying to work on collaborative success plans where you're understanding what value and outcome is, and that really again is something that really drives value. But these bold changes, and this is something that I know we love kind of putting our themes around what bold things you can do here, but there's a number of things that you can do. And I think one of the first ones I'd look at is every new executive, new leader, or potential hire that you're bringing into the business, have them define their objectives, their goals, their KPIs, their OKRs for them, for their team, that are focused around the customer's long-term success and outcomes. Clearly, you've got to start with your overall business objectives, but each individual's teams, each individual's objectives really need to have that focus on what drives the customer's long-term success and outcomes. And that helps them then justify their approach in how they run the department. So is the department focused on driving that long-term value and long-term success for my customers? And what specific steps and actions do they need to take to ensure that their department is contributing to that success and feeding into the overall business objectives and your customers' objectives? So I think that alignment around customer-focused goals is a critical number one. I think the other thing that I'd really advocate is that you allocate a percentage of product development time in your sprints to focus on building functionality in the product that supports customer success efforts, to engage your customers, to help your customers create value and recognize the value they receive. So really focus on that and put some time away. You're making an investment to drive the success from the product. That's really important.
Definitely.
I think another thing is around the sales team, and you hit on a couple of key points around this, Jason, but how do we make sure and ensure that our sales team are selling for long-term renewals and not just for that initial short-term sale? And that's so important. It requires a different way of thinking for many salespeople, including sales leaders and other business leaders, a different approach, a different type of relationship with your customers. But you've also got to look at potentially fundamental changes to your commissioning structure to encourage the right sort of behavior, to focus on, I want this customer not just to sell now and land a deal now, but I want them to renew with me in 1 year, 2 years, 3 years. And for each of those renewals, I need to be driving that value. And if you can put your commission structure around those renewals, that really does help encourage that behavior. And it changes the way of thinking for our sales teams.
You know, I just had a conversation the other day with someone who was sharing that their sales structure their commission structure has changed from the amount of revenue landed in the deal to the amount of consumption of the product that is done. So they were tracking product usage and consumption and commissioning salespeople on that. And that's really shifting their behavior and their focus in that long-term mentality. And I think any organization that's looking for a concrete way to make a dramatic shift, you know, if that's what you want to do to secure the renewals, then that should be how you compensate your employees. I thought it was a great way to do it.
I love that. And I think we will see more of that. You know, the challenge then comes for the sales team to understand what we mean by consumption, how you measure it as a business, how the customer measure it.
Yep.
But you're using that consumption as a value base and an outcome base that we can then show our customers. And it's a metric that we can measure, which is really cool. It'll be interesting to see the success of that kind of function.
Yeah. Sorry to cut you off then. So
that's all right. No, not at all. I think the other thing we can do, as well as having your sales team shift the focus, is look at your marketing team as well, and your marketing effort focused on, again, business outcomes, business value, not just around new features, new benefits that we're releasing, but around what new value are we generating and how are we generating it. I think you can have your support team, your professional services team really focused on client interactions, customer interactions, on solving problems, those reactive problems that come in, but also then explicitly linking that resolution of those problems, again, back to, I've resolved this problem. How does this drive more value, more outcomes for you as a customer? So again, it's having that link from not just being reactive to being forward thinking about the values and outcomes. Yes, support, of course, need to respond to customers' problems, but help them focus on how the resolution ultimately will help the customer's long-term success and drive value for them. I know it's something that we've talked about before, but you're seeing a lot of organizations start appointing a new C role that's focused on the customer. Now, that could be a chief customer officer, it could be a chief customer experience officer, a chief experience officer, or even something that Jason and we've spoken about, this chief collaboration officer that helps bring the teams together, helps the teams come together to focus and to align on customer outcomes, customer experiences, and customer success, but also helps as that kind of person and team there to help facilitate that long-term collaboration. And that's something that I'm super passionate about within an organization, is your chief collaboration, your chief customer officer is there as a horizontal remit to bring the business together and get everyone focused on it there. It's not necessarily a role that has a big team, but it has a very broad responsibility.
Yeah,
I think that's something that's super important. Were there any other things that you could add to that, Jason?
No, I think you covered a lot of them. I think there's some great ways there. You know, I'm really excited about the prospect of changing compensation plans to, you know, drive usage and consumption of a product. I think that's a great one. You know, and the chief collaboration officer, I think that would be really impactful if people do it in a way that they have the authority to drive meaningful change within the organization and the resources to back it up. You know, because otherwise it's just sort of lip service, and organizations don't need to waste time on lip service kind of thing. So I think there's a lot of great stuff there, and I would love to see everyone else's thoughts and comments on should CS be involved from very day one? How would they go about integrating into their organization? And if you're a listener out there and you've already started down this approach of putting it into your organization from day one, we'd love to hear your experiences and insights. So, you know, drop us a line and let us know what it's doing. We'd love to have you as a guest on the show and hear what's going on, so you can share your experience and knowledge with others. So
I think that's such a key thing, because it's not an easy thing to do. There's some organizations and leaders that are doing it right. I know some great examples. You do, Jason. Mm-hmm. We're both privileged to work with customers and organizations where this has happened. But on the flip side, it still is a big challenge. And we'd love to hear what people have done that's been successful, or it's not been successful, to share with everyone.
Yep. So I think that brings us back to then to wind up our bold challenge question again, the recap. So when you're starting a new company, what do you need to do to integrate a customer success culture and practice into everything you do in your organization from day one? So give that some thought. Let us know your ideas and your experience. And thank you so much. And we hope you will join us for another episode of the Jason's Take On coming very soon. All right.
Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you. Have a good day.
You too. Take care. Stay safe.